So this is the end of the series in the first few chapters of Genesis. I thought I was going to stretch 11 chapters through the whole summer, but couldn't quite do it. I didn't want to preach on the genealogies, so here we are. Let's begin with prayer. Our Heavenly Father, thank you that you speak to us. Please speak to us now, Lord. Give us your Spirit. I pray that your word would give light to our eyes, and it would be a path for our feet. Amen. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Who's he talking to? Whose children? I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous about coming to preach here this summer. Part of it is I can be a nervous guy sometimes. Part of it is just it's an unfamiliar place. I didn't know any of you until, 2.5 months ago, something like that. And part of it is never having done this much preaching before. But part of it is the city. You might not be aware of this, but people from small towns like Vida have a complex relationship with large cities like Winnipeg. I think we have some resentment. It's nothing personal. There's a scene from the show called Mad Men, where there's these two characters talking to each other, and one character says to his superior, he's trying to condescend to him, he's trying to bring him down a notch. He says, "I feel bad for you." And his superior doesn't even look at him and says, "I don't think about you at all." Sometimes that's kind of how it feels. I think out in Vida, we're intimidated by cities. We tell ourselves that city life must be miserable because it's so different from small town and country living. But really, I think at its heart, it's this feeling of insignificance. Such a small town couldn't possibly matter to a metropolis like Winnipeg. How many of you had actually heard of Vida before I came here? Okay, that's way more hands than I thought, but thanks, that feels good. And there's also the stereotypes. Hayseeds, rubes, country bumpkins. And it's true, life does move a little bit slower out in Vida. Just this week, for some reason, there's been horse-drawn wagons driving up and down my street. I'm not sure what's going on, but that's Vida. And so I think a big city makes us feel small. Like out in Vida, we're just children. Like the real adults, the grown-ups live in the cities where things actually happen. And so we invent stories to explain why the differences are actually bad. Why cities are evil inherently. Why you're the children, actually, grow up. Maybe that's why I love dystopias. Last week I mentioned Huxley's Brave New World. And in general, I just love a good dystopia. I love Blade Runner. It's a good one. And I love how dystopias portray cities. So often you see the privileged few at the top in their polished world, where everything is clean and shiny and bright. But the rest of the world lives in the dirty, gritty, dark underside of the city. And I think that's also why I'm drawn to the book of Revelation. It sort of fits in this dystopian genre. Technically, in today's terms, we would call it celestial punk, I think. But the genre is apocalypse, and it's this idea of pulling back the curtain to see what's really going on. Show me the dark side of this great empire. We see Rome, the city of cities, but it's actually a beast and an adulterer. The world loves Rome for what it has given them, but the world hates Rome for how it oppresses them. Big, evil city. Of course, it's all just childish, right? Stop comparing towns. Let me enjoy life in Vida. I'll let you enjoy life in your city. So our look at the opening chapters of Genesis ends with a city. Not Rome, but Babel, the city of confusion. The city that God comes down to see, takes one look and says, this needs to stop. So what's the big deal with cities? Following the flood, we see the people of the earth, Noah's descendants, multiplying and beginning to fill the earth. In our text today, we see people working together. The story points out that they all have one language. So we see them struggling to survive. They're struggling against the ground for life, but they're working together. God's covenant with Noah meant that they couldn't just kill each other or they would be killed. So the humans work together. So people find their place in life. They realize that their productive capacity is growing massively. Life is getting better for them. They say, this is working. Look at us. We're doing it. We're living, and it's good. So, of course, they want to stay together. Look what they can do with a little cooperation. Of course, they want to find a way to keep it going. So they start making bricks by baking clay, and they stick them together with pitch. Now they can build bigger and taller than ever before. So they say, let's build a city. Let's build a place where we can all live, so we won't be separated, so we can keep this good thing going. That's good, right? People are living together. They're working together. It seems like they're not really killing each other that often. They're finding a way to stay alive, and it seems ordered and not very chaotic. So that's good, right? It seems almost utopian, like the way things were meant to be. But we start to see a dark side of the city. The people say to each other, let's build a tower with its top reaching up to the heavens. And they say, let's make a name for ourselves so that we won't be scattered across the face of the whole earth. A tower with its top reaching in the heavens was a common idea in the ancient world. There's lots of ancient cities that had at their center a giant pyramid structure. And the idea was that this was a stairway to heaven so that the gods could come down to be with them. And so immediately we have some pagan overtones here. The people are trying to reach up and bring the gods down to them, to get them to play a part in this emerging utopia. They want the gods to prop up their efforts to stay in one place. And then they say, let's make a name for ourselves. And that's another self-condemning statement. Remember God's purpose in creating humanity, to praise God, to be worship leaders, to make God's name great in the earth that God has created. But these people in their new city, with their new sense of unity, say, God who? Which God? Whoever comes down the stairs can help us, I guess, but this is about us. Look how great we are. Look what our hands have made. Look at the life we have created for ourselves. And all this is so that they will not be scattered across the earth. Remember God's command to Adam and Eve, repeated 3 times to Noah after the flood. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. Instead, in this new city, we see a defiant digging in. We will stay here. We will not be scattered. We will stay in our own little kingdom and make it great so that we can live here forever. So what we see here in Genesis 11 is not just a city. This is a city that sets itself up against God. This is a city of the glory of humanity, set up in defiance of God. Yes, we see humans working together, but at what cost? That's a theme in dystopias. You have a unified society, but it always comes at a horrific cost. You have a peaceful, ordered world, which is enforced by a brutal, oppressive government. 1984 is kind of like synonymous with that idea, that keep things going exactly the way the government says. And that's a toxic unity, where individual freedoms are non-existent to the society so that society can run smoothly. The city is like a giant wheel which is pushed along by which is pushed along its path by the masses, so that it crushes anyone who gets in the way. And so in the ancient world, there was only one way to build a city so large and to build a tower so tall that it reached the heavens. You would need a lot of slaves. You would need someone to force into labor so that your tower could lift its head to the heavens. You needed someone you could think of as less than human, so that the hundreds of lives that it cost didn't take away from your glory. Turns out it's maybe a little dystopian. And so, to this city that the humans have worked together to build, God comes down. There's some irony here. It turns out the tower up to the heavens didn't quite make it. God has to come down to see it. And we see what the great city actually is. It's a sandcastle on the beach, built by children with an inflated sense of self-importance. The God of all creation comes down to his earth to take a closer look at what his children thought would reach up to him. The people of the earth expected that the tower would bring God down, but not like this. They had imagined God coming down the stairs to be with them, to give them gifts, to be impressed by the city that they had built. Instead, God comes down to take a closer look at their little blanket fort. And he's not impressed with what he sees. God says, look, they are one people, and they have all one language. This is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing they propose to do will now be impossible for them. God is not impressed. He sees their pride. He sees their self-importance. And he sees their defiant attempt to make a name for themselves. God sees their evil all concentrated in one place. And God says this has to stop. Again, we see this. We've seen this throughout the first few chapters of Genesis, the strange idea of what it means to be a human. So small that the tallest tower we could build could never come close to reaching the heavens. Yet so significant that our unified efforts of working together really can produce unthinkable evil. So much so that God has to do something about it. It's like we're children, small and weak. But if left on our own, we can get into all kinds of trouble, even more so if we work together. I remember a story a friend told me of when he was a kid, with him and his 3 siblings would work together to steal sugar from the top shelf in their parents' kitchen. Apparently sugar was like all the way off limits. And they had 2 kids posted as sentries, and one kid would hoist the other one up to the top shelf. And I mean, that's what kids can do. Kids can get into all kinds of trouble, and sugar is an innocent example, more or less. But it can be worse. And I think that's the image we get here. We're like children, where in our struggling to make ourselves important to the world, we are capable of destroying that world, dehumanizing our brothers and sisters, draining God's creation of goodness and life, all in the name of our own glory. So God comes down, and God says, let us confuse their language, so that they will be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And so this is the final irony. In their effort against being scattered, the humans drew the attention of God, their creator, who comes down and scatters them, so that they never do this again. God confuses their language. The city is called Babel, which sounds like the word for confusion. And the city is abandoned. Humanity is divided against itself and scatters across the earth. When I was a kid, I loved building forts. I built a few over the years. My parents' farm has a lot of trees, and so that makes for a lot of really good fort building places. The most impressive one I built was with my friends when we were 15 or so. It was pretty big by fort standards. The main room was probably like 10 by 10, so like 100 square feet. It had I think the ceiling was like just over 6 feet tall, so you could stand up in there. It had a second floor. It had a wall that you could walk along, so you could survey your kingdom, of course. I built these big gates for it. And they were at least as tall as I was, and they were fairly wide. And they worked. They swung open. You could lock them. I was impressed with myself. And I remember my parents also seemed genuinely impressed. My dad came out a few times to have a look, and he thought it was pretty cool. And for a 15-year-old kid, that feels pretty good. But both of us knew what it was. It was a fort. It was a playhouse. It was for fun. It wasn't my home. It wasn't a place where I could actually live. Imagine how foolish it would have been if my dad had come out to the fort and said, "Okay, John, come home now. It's time for dinner." And I had said, "Actually, Dad, I live out here now. Thanks for the offer, Dad, but I've got this. I built my castle. I'm going to live in it now. Clearly, I have what it takes to get by. My friends and I built this fort, so we can do anything. Feel free to visit me anytime, Dad." Of course, my father, good man that he is, wouldn't have let that happen. He would know that I was wrong, that we didn't have what it took to get by. Best case scenario, we'd get hungry in a few hours and come home, because that's what teenagers do. But a much worse option would have been if we actually had made it for a bit, if we had figured out how to survive for a while. We get an image of this from another dystopia, classic high school reading, William Golding's Lord of the Flies. You've probably heard the story. A group of boys are stranded on a tropical island. If you've been reading other adventure stories like Swiss Family Robinson or something like that, you'd think, "Oh, that's perfect. You're on a deserted island. You have everything you need to survive. It's pretty much utopia." But instead, their efforts to survive produce an increasingly dark and sinister little society. It's a story about the evil that humans cause just by working together, just by being alive. And I think that's kind of what we see here in Babel. Humanity really can accomplish incredible things. God acknowledges this. He says this is only the beginning. Nothing they propose to do will be impossible for them now. Because when we work together, we can build things. We can scrape out an existence for ourselves. We can build cities that keep us alive. We can build towers that, from our perspective, down here on the ground, reach all the way up to the heavens. We can set our heads in the sky really believing that we are like God, that we stand next to him, that he can come down and visit us if he wants. But if not, that's fine. We got this far without him, didn't we? But God sees what we've built, and he sees it for what it is. God stoops down to regard our sandcastles, our little forts, which barely reach off the ground. God sees our little kingdoms, and he sees how we suck the life out of his creation just to prop ourselves up as little gods. God sees us for what we are, children playing with forts, all the while convinced that we are gods. So the problem isn't really cities, is it? Our smug self-satisfaction out in Vita tells me that we think we're the ones who have found utopia. We're the ones who have discovered the good life. We're the ones whose tower reaches up to the heavens. The problem isn't cities. It's us. We're the problem. We do this wherever we go. We're so focused on what we can build that we lose sight of God and what God is building. That's just what happens to us. That's just what humans do. Our quest to rebuild paradise can only produce dystopia, good life for a few, misery for the rest. So instead of trying to figure out what we should be building, we wait. We're looking for a better city, a city that is unlike anything that we can build, a city that comes down from heaven, the heavenly city whose architect and builder is God, a city whose cornerstone is Christ, who gave his life, who took on death so that we may live. It's a city in which we will be a great multitude that no one can count. From all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white, singing together, salvation belongs to our God who is seated on the throne and to the Lamb. This is the city to which we will be gathered, having come out of the great ordeal, out of the spiral of death and chaos, where we will wash our robes and make them white in the blood of the Lamb. In this city, we will be before the throne of God. We will worship him day and night. We will receive shelter from the one who is seated on the throne. We will hunger and thirst no more. The sun will not strike us, nor any scorching heat, for the Lamb at the center of the throne will be our shepherd. He will guide us to springs of the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from our eyes. That's the city we're looking for. It's not a city that we can build, but it's a city that God is building. It's a city where we can finally be who we are, who God has created us to be, children, but his children. When Jesus says, "Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these," we always think he's speaking symbolically, don't we? Yes, okay, got it, Jesus. We need childlike faith. Sure thing. But now I have to get back to work because someone needs to feed this family. Someone has to make money. Someone has to keep society going. Someone has to keep building this city. But I don't think that's it. I think Jesus intends for us to see who we really are. We are children. We're not just childish adults, but children of our Father in heaven, his small, weak, dearly loved children. We're the ones with the vision problem. We're the ones who are so convinced that we need to grow up and find our place in the world. We're so convinced that the things we do are so significant. We have our jobs, our families, our charity work, all kinds of things, and they're good things. But it's so easy to see what we do and think that's all there is. I have to do what I do for life to go on. I have to find life for myself. I have to find a way to keep living. We have to keep building so that we won't be scattered across the earth. And we get sucked into Babel, into building our own tower to reach the heavens, which God comes down to see as a sandcastle, a pile of sticks and mud, built by his poor lost children who can't remember how good it is to be loved by their Father. Jesus says, "Let the little children come to me, and do not stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." And he's talking about us. We are the children of God. We belong with our Father seated around his throne in the heavenly city that he has built, which is our home. So that's it. That's the story of who we are, according to Genesis 1-11. The rest of the story is pretty good too. It hasn't ended yet, but we know how it ends. Our Father in heaven, whose name is holy, comes to earth. His kingdom is established here on earth as it is in heaven. Our Father gives his children what they need every day. He forgives our sins and teaches us to forgive others. Our Father delivers us from evil, from the chaos and death that we have created, because this is his creation. This is his kingdom. We are his children, for his glory, forever and ever. Amen.